Hey guys, welcome back to another Hypixel API tutorial video. In this episode I'm going to be going over not too much of a tutorial. We're not going to be looking at any specific endpoint, but we're actually going to be looking at how we can implement one of the endpoints. So I recently did a video on the auctions endpoint. So in this video we're going to be going ahead and making an auction scraper, or at least I already made one. It's very simple, and I'm going to be going over how it works in case you guys want to replicate something similar, because I've noticed there's a lot of people, especially on the code help section on the forums and stuff, who are wanting to use the auction API, but they're really, not that into it, and they don't have all this experience, or they're struggling a little bit. But I figured, since I have a lot of experience with the API, and actually this video is sponsored by one of my Patreons, I would go ahead and show you guys how I did it. So this guy came up to me recently, and super nice guy, and he asked me for help with making a program that would scrape the auction for him, so that he could get the best deals and know exactly when the best deals are out there, when certain items go under a certain price, so that he can grab them. He can be the first one to grab them, right? I guess you know Skyblock players, right? They're all freaky when it comes to trying making a buck. So because of that, I figured, why not? I'll work on this project. So I've got this project here. We're going to be using async stuff here. We're going to be using the API, of course. We're going to be using basic filtering, and that's about it. We're actually not going to do any sorting in this video. I'll leave that up to you guys. That's like an extra little exercise if anybody wants to follow along at home. So first off, we're going to import gRequests for async request calls, and then we're going to be doing JSON, of course. Anytime you're handling the API, you want to use JSON. And then pretty print just to show you guys some output, but that's not required. And then just basics to get us started. I'm going to have this array here, which I'll explain in a second, but just my filters, right? My filters for the items. I've got my API key. Make sure you put in your own API key here. Don't bother trying to use my API key. If you try to use my API key, it won't work out because by the time you're seeing this video, I've already renewed it. So the API key is already no longer valid, right? And then we're going to have one thing right here. This is going to be to store auction items. I actually think, do I still use this in my code anywhere? I'm not sure if I do. Wait, I might not need this. I think this is for like an old solution. Find auction items. Yeah, I actually don't use this anywhere. So we can actually remove that. Sorry about that. We've got data. So this is just where we're going to temporarily store data that we get out of the API call for every API. Every API request that we do, we're just going to temporarily store the data into data. I believe so, right? Let me just make sure that we actually use that. Yeah, we actually use that quite a bit. Okay. And then we've got auction finals. These are all our items out of the auction house API that went through our filters and passed our filters, and that we're actually we actually want these. So this is the final return that we give back to the user. And of course, if I was actually using this in a project, I would want it to I'd probably throw this into a Discord bot and then get it to ping me or something, or ping the user whenever the items, right? And I'd be running this 24/7. But I'm just showing you guys the basic algorithm on how to script the API for the auction stuff. But you can go ahead and get all creative with how you want to actually use this. And then we've just got our URL base. If you didn't watch my video I just made on the Hypixel Skyblock Auctions API, go check that out. You'll know everything you need about the output here that the API will give us. Then we've got our filters. This is a system that I made myself. Well, in the algorithm, just to set up. And you can do this however you want, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be using my system. So if you're a little new to this, you might want to use my system just so you don't get too lost. So looking at this here, I can add as many of these as you want, right? So it's like a dictionary of multiple filters. I can put multiple filters, and it finds an item, and as soon as it finds one filter that matches to fully, then it'll add it, right? So every item just has to match any one of these filters, and it'll work. And each filter acts as a filter object. So you can add multiple filters within the one filter. So I've got a generic name just so that in the output I know which filter it managed to make through. This is more for debugging than anything else. but you can put like code names here if you want. And then we've got a few filters that I'll go over in a second. And we've got a special filter that's a little more custom that I put at the end. So I've got, I'll go over the price first. So after we do all the other filtering stuff, we want to make sure we only really want the item if it's below our price threshold, because we don't care if there's like a legendary sheep pet, but it's way overpriced, right? We only care if it's below like the certain amount of money that we're willing to pay. And because of that, I have this little price filter that is separate from the other filters. Even though it's in the same like filter object, we use it a little differently. We exclude it and then re-include it later. And that just to make sure that we only really get the items that matter, right? Because the only items that matter are those that go through filters. And one of the filters that we really care about is the price threshold, right? So we've got a few filters here. And these filter names I yoinked directly from the API. So these are actual properties that each auction object has. So just make sure like I'm matching name to name. I'm not doing any fancy conversion stuff. I just use what they use. So they write item name like this, snake case. I'm in snake case. Snake case works wonderful in Python. So I've got item name, which is in the API. I've got tier also in the API. And these are both required every time anyways. And then just here as an extra example, you can put additional filters, and then if you don't actually want them, so let's say I had my second filter here and I didn't care about the tier, then I could have it here and just leave it blank, so that you can have like a template and then copy paste a few times and just edit it for every filter you want. Of course here I just want epic jargon items, but I do have support so that you can just leave it blank, and you'll see it'll just, if this is blank, then it'll just skip over the category section of this filter and it won't try to match anything. And all these filters are inclusive. So for example, the word sheep here, it doesn't have, like the full name of the item isn't going to be sheep. And you're just going to check if sheep is in the name. So if you get like level 81 sheep pet, right? It'll match the word sheep and say it's good for the item name. Moving on from that, I'll show you guys some basic stuff. So the way it works, this is just a function here I'll go over in a second once we actually start using it. But this is just, we throw in an item and then it'll throw out whether or not it's a good item. So if it passed the filters or not, and then why. So if it's false, then it'll say why it passed the filter, it didn't pass the filters. If it's true, then instead of returning why, it'll just return a new object that is the object we want to save. So at the very start here, we have our basic URL. And if you don't provide a page, it gives you page 0, which is actually what we want, because there's always a page 0, not always a page 1, and etc. Right? So we got two different types, or two different sections here that we use for making the API calls. So we've got our page 0 and then pages 1 through n, right? If there even is a 1. And to do that, we start off with the page 0 section. So we make our asynchronous call, although it doesn't really matter now. I just didn't feel like using two different libraries. So we make an asynchronous call, but only with one HTTP request. So it's not like, it doesn't really matter if it's async or not. But we did that. And then we take the response in that and we run it through this. So for every item in the response, even though there's only one response, we still have to loop through them. You're going to take the data, and this is just some specific stuff because it's page 0. So first off, put the data, take the response, get the content out of it, load it with JSON from like bit data or byte data into JSON type, and then put that into the variable data. And then get the total amount of pages, because we're going to use that in part 2. And then I just have some basic debugging-esque stuff that just says like, hey, this is how many pages we found. Just for, testing purposes, and it's nice to keep in there. And then this little section here, I've got a quick if-else here. So if and matching else, and this just ensures, as I always encourage when you're doing API stuff, ensure that like before you try using any of the data, ensure that you actually got the data. So make sure it was a successful call. So here I'm just checking if data success is equal to true. And if it's not, then don't do anything and just say like, look, I couldn't get the data here, and it's because of this cause, and it'll say the cause. Which when every time this is false, then it'll there's always a cause, so I don't have to worry about that. And then I've got for every auction item in the auction, so get all the items from page 0, right? Because we're not going to waste this page 0 data. We're not going to bother recalling it. We're just going to deal with it now. So we're going to go through page 0 as auctions, which should be 1,000 elements if there's over 1,000 elements in like auction items in total. And then for every item, try and pass it or put it into the filter and then get back whatever the answer is. And if it passed the filter, then add the item object, the like new fancy object or custom object to auction_final. Auction_final is up here. It's our array of like our final items that we care about. And otherwise, then it filled the filter. We honestly don't care if it filled the filter or not, so we're just going to pass, right? I could just remove this, but it's a good habit just in case we do want to do anything in the future. So if you want to do debugging stuff here temporarily, then you can do that, and just easy to throw it in there. And then if anything went wrong here for whatever reason, classic debugging, I want to show the data, because that means the data is wrong in some way. There's something wrong with the data, so I want to show what happened just to help me debug some stuff. And then now that we have the page count, this is the part 2 section. So this is getting all the other pages and getting those auction items. So now I make a new empty array empty list, sorry, of that I'm going to be putting my URLs in. And then for page and page count 1, so because I already did page 0, so I want to do 1, the total pages plus 1. I want to get the pages, and I want to make a new URL using the URL base and then adding a page count. And so in here, you'll have like api.hypixel.net /skyblock /auctions key is equal to API key, and page is equal to, and then the page count. And so just do that for all the different pages. Throw them into URLs, and then get the async call for all those URLs. This does take a minute. The response back from this takes a little bit of time, but it's reasonable for like this many calls, right? And obviously going through several dozen thousand auction items through the filter, and we've got 2 different filters, not just one filter, and the filters are a little custom built so that they're templatable and everything, and it's easier to write like new filters. Because I want support for that, it does take a little bit of time to run this code, but it's still reasonable enough to where you could run this every 10 seconds or so, and then be within 10 seconds of when new auctions are sent out. And then here, get items from remaining pages. So we got the responses back from the async call, and then we're going to put them into our for loop. So it's taking those from for loop, and then for every page, throw the data, get the content of the response, so that specific API or HTTP response. Load it with JSON, and then send it into data. Now that we've got that into data, it's this actually, I think it's the exact same as up here, where we just verify the success, and then throw it into this, try accept, very basic stuff here. If it passes the filter, sorry, then we add it, otherwise no. And then at the end here, I've just got quick debug, quick stuff to tell that it shows in the console, I should say. So for here, it says how many items were found. So how many total items passed through all our filters. And then it prints out with preprint. It still doesn't look that good. You can print out in your own custom way, but I don't care too much about that. I'm just going to preprint the basic data, which is just going to be an array of tuples, really. And then just one last thing we have to go over, and that's this big function. It's actually not that many lines, but I added a lot of that's like white space and stuff, right? So let's go over this. First off, check if it's a bin item, because for this specific project, the person who asked me said he doesn't care about normal auctions. He only cares about getting items that you can instantly buy, and those are the ones that have bin. And if you haven't watched my previous video, a quick rundown on how bin works. Either it won't be there at all, or it'll be there and it'll be true. So if it's not true, it won't be there and then be false. It'll just not be there at all. So we just check if bin is in the parameters for that object, that auction object. And then if it's not in there, easy, we're just going to immediately return false. It's not a bin. It's not a bin auction. Next up, we run a quick check to see if it was already claimed. If it's already claimed, we don't care about the auction anymore. Someone already claimed it. I don't care about that. So for that specifically, we just get rid of that. And then we run through our object rule sets. So I call it a rule set here in my code. To you guys, that's just like a filter, like one of the little filter things that should appear. So this is one filter and this is another filter. You can keep adding these. Also, I'll quickly go over these filters. So the first filter is just looking for legendary items that have the word sheep in it. So this is going to be legendary sheep pets exclusively, I believe. Although you should probably add more filtering if you really care about that, about specifically getting that. And then this is just going to get dragon items that are epic. I think this includes epic dragon pets, but also a lot of other junk. This was just like extra testing to make sure that I can template my filters. And then, yeah, so for every different filter object, you start as, okay, sure, all the filters pass. Just assume all the filters pass. And then go through every filter and see if it doesn't pass, right? And so here specifically, for every rule, so for every filter parameter within a filter object, make sure that filter isn't price, because price we want to handle separately later. And make sure that it's not empty. So if the rule is empty, then we don't care. All right, so I said skip over all the empty ones. So if it's not empty, then check if it's the name or whatever, for example. So if we're doing item name, make sure sheep is not in that version on the actual auction object. And then if it's really not, then just make valid equal to false. And then it broke one of our rule sets, so we don't care. We could minimax this a little more, make it actually quite more efficient. And I might look to do this in the future. However, just for the purpose of the video, I didn't clean up the code too much, just a tiny bit, so that it was very simple, readable, with no extra stuff, you know? And so we could break out of the for loop here knowing that one of them already broke. And then here, so assuming it made it past all this, we want to check, I think I'm doing this in the wrong order. Yeah, I should probably flip this order. But it's a potential match with the filter. We just want to, oh yeah, no, this is in the right order. So one last filter separate is I want to make sure that the price, so make sure that the starting bid for the bin, which is actually just the price of the item if it is a bin auction object, then just make sure that's below our price threshold that we set for that specific filter. And I do require a price for this. You could add support for like not putting a price and just getting every item, but I didn't care too much about that. And then now that we know we found something that works for sure, then to just verify it works, it did make it through the filter, right? Valid. Then return true with the object, and then knowing that that didn't trigger, it means this is going to trigger. So it broke on one of the requirements. Obviously, this is not highly optimized. There's so many optimizations I'm seeing after looking at this a second time. But it works. It gets the job done for all the new programmers who need to work on it. A project like this for the first time. It's just going to require not all requirements met, like in the filter. And when I run this, for example, I'll show you guys. It's very inefficient. I believe I can just do this. There we go. You can see my command prompt. And here we're going to do skyblock auto bin.py. You'll press enter on that, and you'll see it takes a minute. It got our total amount of pages, which is 64 pages. And then it's going to take another second just to go through all of the several thousand. I think that's 63,000 and something auctions. So just going through all of those right now. and doing all the photo stuff. Like I said, this can still be optimized. We can probably cut the time at least in half here, but I wasn't too big on optimizing this. And then, ooh, it's taking a while this time. I'm curious if it got caught on something. Normally it doesn't take more than like 4 seconds. This definitely needs optimizing. Jeez. Maybe my API key's maxed out. Nope, there we go. It just took forever for some reason, but you can see we have all our objects here, and you could sort all these so that you have like all the sheep heads first and then all the dragon stuff after. I don't really care. That would just look like sorting the price, so final price here. No, it'd be sorting the ID first, and then after sorting the ID, sorting the price. But what I've got is it outputs the ID, so which filter it matched to, more for debugging than anything else. It gives the auction UID, so auction object UID in a command / view auction. I didn't know about this command, but the person who asked me to make this project told me about it. It's actually a super helpful command. You do / view auction space and then the UID of the auction object, and it brings up the panel for that auction, and you can just immediately purchase it right there really quickly. It also allows you to do some fun stuff with the mind flare bot. Maybe in the future I can do that for a specific episode on my Hypixel bot series that hopefully should be coming soon. Not sure. If you really want me to push that a little sooner, I'm trying to make high quality videos for that. But if you want to see more of the coding stuff and less of the like showy solution stuff for my Hypixel bot, for those who don't know, I'm making a Minecraft bot to play Hypixel, various Hypixel games and do different stuff. On Hypixel and in just Minecraft in general, starting with Hypixel, start a little small, you know. And so if you want to see more of the coding stuff for that, comment down below, and I'd love to make videos on that, maybe in some live streams in the future. But I'm only planning on doing like more high-tech videos or just showcase the outcome of a lot of hard work without showing any of the code in the background. But yeah, so just the thing right here, and the reason why I want to do it in here is I'm planning to eventually throw this into a Discord bot or something. And because of that, I want it to be very easy to just copy paste the command absurdly quick, so that you buy it faster than anybody else, right? And then it's got the price for the item. So for example, this is 48.5 million, and it's a level 82 epic Ender Dragon pet, I think. And obviously some unknown ASCII characters. Don't worry about that. But yeah, and then yeah, down here after the price, one last item in the tuple, I've just got the name of the object. Anyways, I figured I'd go over that briefly. It's a cool little project I made. Hopefully it helps all those people who need help with stuff like that. If you have any questions, make sure you comment down below. If you want to support anything I do, or if you want me to work on a project for you specifically, you can contact me. And in fact, the best way to get to me is to subscribe and sponsor me on my Patreon directly. And I'll be sure to help you with whatever you need if you sponsor me on my Patreon, which you can find down in the description. If you just want to join a friendly community of people who work on different bots and stuff like that, I've got my Discord down below where you can also, there's like a channel for API and coding help. So for Hypixel specifically with the API, if you're struggling, you're newer, ask questions there, loads of people to help you. We've got a little community growing. And then, of course, like the video if you learned anything here, if you like it, just so that more people can see it. Subscribe if you want to stay up to date with all my tutorials and all my little projects. I do all sorts of stuff. Anyways, that's been it for this little like Hypixel API project, like walkthrough-esque thing.